What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Law Enforcement Today. It's been a couple weeks. I was out of the state last week.
So was I.
Tell everybody why we have this show.
So we're here to talk the civilian, civil servant, and the connections between those, things that we do to support each other through whether it be nonprofit work, whether it be law enforcement, supporting law enforcement officers, supporting law enforcement agencies. And Kyle brings the civilian side, I bring the civil servant side, and we have a conversation about everything that has to do with law enforcement.
Here's the reality of it. We are having these conversations because a lot of the time the mainstream media isn't, and on the rare occasion that they are, they're limited to typically 6-second sound bites. So we take on the topics that you send in or that we find on a regular basis and we hash them out with just some real talk. I can say things that most cops can't say because I actually have the First Amendment, whereas you guys really kind of don't because you'll get fired. So we muzzle him a little bit and I run my mouth. Topic of the day, let's start off. You want to go San Francisco first?
Yeah, we'll go with San Francisco. So in San Francisco, we're looking at an entire change that law enforcement officers have to do their jobs because of the decision of a district attorney. So in San Francisco, the ability for law enforcement officers to utilize what are called pretextual stops. Stop for a minor motor vehicle violation, and during the interaction with the operator, they may develop information that allows them to go a little further with the investigation. They may spot some drugs. They may smell some marijuana. They may have a canine in the area who comes by and does a walk around of the vehicle and indicates that there could be narcotics. Now, what happens when that individual gets arrested? The district attorney has decided that they are not going to press forward with investigations that come out of those pretextual stops.
Listen, this is much bigger than pretextual stops, right? You have a new DA in San Francisco that is massively anti-law enforcement. His parents were terrorists, were domestic terrorists who were convicted of killing a cop, and he flat out said he was going to completely reshape criminal justice. You have a guy who is blatantly anti-law enforcement. Like there's no gray area on this. He has said that he's going to put criminals first. So what do you expect is going to happen? Of course he's going to tie the hands of law enforcement. You have a state that has some of the most restrictive gun laws in America, but then you're going to tie the hands of law enforcement from being able to actually enforce the freaking gun laws.
What does that do for those law enforcement officers? It now puts a crutch on the way that they're able to do things. It also creates a situation where, and we talk about it all the time, law enforcement officers' mission is public safety. If we stop a vehicle for a taillight out and all of a sudden we locate an illegal firearm in that vehicle, well, just because we stop the vehicle for a taillight doesn't mean we don't pursue the fact that there's an illegal firearm in the vehicle. Now looking at this and these practices and this policy, those charges aren't going to stick.
But it's not just San Francisco. It's happening across the country. You've got the Houston DA, another one who's just tossing firearms charges left and right. Now you have New York under their bail reform, which even Democrats are saying is a disaster in New York, and they're the ones that shove this down everybody's throat. You have witnesses who have said, yeah, we're not coming forward. And so you have criminals, you have killers who are going to walk because people are afraid to come forward because under this new bail reform and criminal justice, that information becomes public record.
The biggest thing with this is these are established practices that have come before the Supreme Court of the United States. And the fact that a policy decision is now going against those decisions by the Supreme Court, that creates a big issue.
And they wonder why there are recruiting issues throughout California and in some of these big cities. All right, so speaking of insanity, how about what's going on in Seattle with, I don't know if you guys have been following this or not, but another law that's being shoved down everybody's throats. So in the past, if you intentionally exposed your partner to HIV, that was a big deal. That was a felony. Now, the leaders The fearless leaders in the state have decriminalized that and said it's a misdemeanor. Operative word here being intentionally expose somebody to HIV, it's now a misdemeanor. Why? Well, social justice and feelings, and apparently that is going to destigmatize the conversation about HIV. This is ridiculous, man. I mean, we are talking about somebody who is intentionally doing harm to somebody else. Why would we take away the ability of law enforcement to prosecute a bad person?
Not only is it intentionally doing harm to somebody else, it's intentionally doing harm to somebody else that could have the potential of that person losing their life because of the associated disease that is created, is exposed. I just don't understand how there's this stepping back from actually holding people accountable for actions like that.
You know, a lot of people in the media like to talk about a constitutional crisis, right? They made this whole big thing around President Trump and constitutional crisis. But at what point do we start to recognize that the true crisis that we have in America right now is having politicians who are passing laws that are unconstitutional, or who are just blatantly ignoring laws that they don't like because they have a personal agenda about it? That is an existential threat to America when you refuse to allow law enforcement to crack down on criminals, on drugs, on illegal weapons, and you do it all in the name of social justice. That is a crisis.
And from our standpoint, and I know I've spoken about this before, we are there to enforce the laws that are on the books. We're in there to enforce the laws that the legislature passes. So for us to see this happening, it's frustrating to be able to say that we're doing everything we can for the general public when clearly there are things that are happening in terms of the way we do things that are creating a bad situation for us.
Well, so now you've got in New Mexico, and I know we weren't planning on talking about this, but we're going here, which is the conversation about red flag laws. You have the governor of New Mexico who flat out said, if you're not going to enforce she didn't say unconstitutional laws, but they are, if you're not going to enforce them, quit, leave, get out of here. In Virginia, there was just a block to make sure that cops did not receive a 3% raise, which 3% raise is an embarrassment, but they wouldn't receive that because they said we're not going to enforce unconstitutional laws. So, I mean, we're going to see more and more of this, not just leading up to the 2020 election, but regardless of who wins, we're going to see more and more of it. So that kind of brings us to the important topic of the day, which is New York. So in New York, and I think we've touched base on this a little bit in the past, you have New York politicians who are refusing to provide data to federal immigration law enforcement, who are saying DMV databases, nope, can't have any of that, ICE. And they're forcing agencies to basically sign this pledge saying that they won't cooperate with ICE, and if they do, they're not going to allow them to have access. Now, this is the same data that is voluntarily handed over to Canada. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to you to welcome back our previous guest, Stephen from Conflict International.
So today I'm here with Stephen from Conflict International. How you doing, Stephen?
Pretty good, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and one of the things I think you can give some insight in, is data sharing in law enforcement. I know that you spoke at a panel recently in D.C. where data sharing in law enforcement was the topic of conversation. Talk to me about what came out of that.
Yeah, so that was a very interesting panel, and I felt very blessed and honored to be a part of that panel. I had some really great people on there. We had politicians, we had law enforcement, we had private sector, and I represented the international community and how we dealt with that. It was specifically on whether or not Congress was going to pass a law based off of the findings that were sent in, dealing with senators and congressmen using private security. Well, how does that go in? And we boiled it down to, hey, we need standards. Everyone across the board needs to have that information on really, hey, who people are there getting, what are their backgrounds, what are their training and skill set. What really came out of that was the cooperation between law enforcement, politicians, the civilian sector. Everybody got on the same page, and you don't really get that a lot. But I've come to find out that when the cause is right and you're in the search for truth, that's when information sharing and everyone can get on board with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, in law enforcement, one of the biggest things I think post 9/11 that came out was the fact that information sharing kind of became the base as to how we went about a lot of the investigations. If another agency, whether it be federal, whether it be state, whether it be local, has information to share on a certain individual or a certain location, that information then got spread around so that the investigations were that much better. Data sharing is so important today, and I think a lot of work needs to be done. Certainly with what you spoke of and the things that can come out of data sharing, the positive aspects to law enforcement, I hope that we can do better moving forward, and certainly we've taken a lot of steps, but there's definitely more we can do.
Oh, absolutely. And so when you look at the historics of it, so we'll go back to the late 70s and the early 80s. You mentioned federal agencies. So let's look at the animosity between the Bureau and the agency, the CIA. Mm-hmm. So if you had applied for both agencies going in during that time, the Bureau told you, hey, you had to redact your application because we weren't going to take you. They didn't want to share information. And moving forward, we're now at post 9/11. In 2006, there was a memorandum that came down that said, we're going to do this great information sharing. It's going to make everything better. A lot of federal agencies didn't want to share information. We don't know where that's going. We don't know, hey, are you going to burn our source or not? Hey, how is this going to jeopardize my investigation? It has gotten a lot better. And here we are, we're 14 years later with that, and it's gotten a lot better. And what we've seen from that information sharing is exactly what you described. Law enforcement agencies, whether it's on the state or federal level, are able to do their job better, which is ultimately protecting their citizens.
Absolutely. And I think, when we talked about it earlier, when you see a state not providing information based on the cooperation of an agency with federal assets, certainly that's totally contradictory to what we're trying to do in terms of data sharing.
Yeah, it's, I can speak on what I know, and for us at Conflict International, we're always in the search for truth. So starting from no matter what the type of investigation is, getting it in, we're looking for truth. What actually happened? What can we prove? Just the facts, just the truth of it. And we have a wonderful relationship working with law enforcement, both federal and state, and not just here in the U.S., around the world. Being a member of the World Association of Detectives, our CEO, Mike LaCourte, is the executive chairman of the World Association of Detectives. Recently, we had a memorandum of understanding signed with the IPA, the International Police Association. It was a big, huge event. And with that, we're able to go out and help now law enforcement all over the world and kind of fill in those gaps and those holes. And at Conflict International, specifically here in the United States and abroad, we love working with our law enforcement counterparts and being able to help them out.
So certainly, looking at law enforcement's ability to gather information and now having Conflict International cooperate with law enforcement agencies around the world, you're providing not only a basis for those law enforcement agencies to have access to that much more information, it's going to enable those agencies to ensure public safety that much better with the data that you're providing. So.
Yeah, and we're solution-oriented. Whether you're a corporate client, whether you're a legal client, whether you're a high net worth individual, or you're law enforcement from anywhere in the world, when you come to us, you say, hey, this is our problem. We're going to provide you with a solution.
So your cooperation with law enforcement is certainly helping us do our jobs that much better. And obviously, it's not just on the national level, it's on the international level as well. So I certainly think what Conflict International is doing is way ahead of the curve in terms of that cooperation between private and public sector. So.
Well, and I'd like to also give a shout out to everyone else within the WAD, World Association of Detectives, and the IPA, the International Police Association. Because while, yes, we are handling this at Conflict, it is a growing movement now, and I love being able to see that, of cooperation to protect citizens from 90 different countries from around the world, where you have some of the best detectives in the world that are involved in the World Association of Detectives. It's been around since 1921.
We've known in law enforcement that to do our jobs better, the more information we have, the better we're going to be. So certainly Conflict International is a part of that. So.
And we love working with our brothers and sisters in law enforcement.
And, I thank you for doing what you're doing in terms of being there for those public agency investigators around the world and giving them that information that they can utilize to do their jobs better. So thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
And thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Now I'm going to kick it back to Kyle and First Ticks and Vet Ticks.
I'm so excited to have this guy out here. Flew from across the country, dodged the coronavirus, brought us some swag, a nice large shirt for me. Thank you for the compliment. And a women's medium fitted. That's going to be a little big on Shay.
Well, I wanted to split the difference, and maybe you like the drop neck.
I'll fill it out a lot better.
You'll look good in it.
So this guy came all the way out from Arizona. He is with First Ticks and Vet Ticks. Let's talk a little bit about the organizations.
My favorite subject.
Whiskey is mine, but this is number 2.
Okay,
I'll go with that.
I can go with that. Yes. So, what do you want to know?
So, well, first of all, what is Vet Ticks and what is First Ticks, and what do the two have to do with each other, and why do these people all care?
Well, it's a great question. So, Vet Ticks and First Ticks are national nonprofit organizations. They're 501c3 organizations. So, Vet Ticks was created first, and what we do is we give back. We give to those who have served. And what we do is we get donated event tickets to ball games, concerts, all different types of sporting events, family events, performing arts, anything where there's a ticket involved. And we get them donated by performers, promoters, venues, private donors, and we turn around and we distribute them for free to veterans, currently serving members of the military, to include the Guard and Reserve, and to first responders. And the reason we do it is a way to say thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. And we know that when you're on duty or when you're deployed or even as a veteran, you spend time away from your family, from your friends, serving our country, serving our community, and you miss family events. It could be the birth of a child, it could be an anniversary, birthdays, significant family events that you miss. And this is a way to send our members to these events as a way to say thank you, to make up for some lost time, for a couple hours a day, an evening, spend some time with your friends and family, and just forget about the everyday stresses of life.
Now, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I was sort of a skeptic because we are taught to be skeptical of everything. And so when I heard about the organization for the first time, I just thought, what are they doing? Maybe giving out some like craft fair tickets, right? And probably charging $20 a pop, because there's always a catch with everything. And then we vetted out the organization, obviously, before we had you on the show. I mean, you just gave away freaking Super Bowl tickets. You give away tickets to Kenny Chesney and Jay-Z and some huge games and events. And what is the most that somebody would ever pay? Because I think that's a really important thing to touch on.
Sure, and that's where we we distribute these tickets for free. But we also know that when you get something for free, sometimes you don't always use it. And that's important to our donors, that when they donate these tickets to us and we distribute them to veterans, service members, first responders, that they attend these events. So we want them in the seats. So we have a small delivery fee. And the reason for that delivery fee is skin in the game. If you pay a couple bucks for something, you're more likely to use it. And that's where you'll never pay more than $14.97. And that's not per ticket, that's per transaction. So you could, in essence, get tickets to the Super Bowl and 2 tickets to the Super Bowl and pay $14.97.
Now, one of the things that I really like about the organization and the mission is that it's not, in a lot of cases, it's not just me and my family. You'll find yourself among brothers and sisters who also serve. Talk to me a little bit about that and sort of the camaraderie and how this is helping so many people with post-traumatic stress as well.
Sure, yeah, and that's where you can, depending on how many tickets we get donated, it's usually 2 tickets or 4 tickets, sometimes more. And if you don't have a family, if you're single guy, girl, whatever, and you get a couple 4 tickets, take your buddies, your battle buddies, or your fellow first responders, and it's really just a way to bond and build that camaraderie. And the cool thing about what we do, our organization, and the donors is that a lot of times, in most cases, these tickets are donated in blocks and sections. So when you're at an event through Vet Ticks or First Ticks, most likely you're sitting in the same row, the same section as other Vet Ticks members or other First Ticks members. So you're sitting among your tribe. And we know that a lot of these cats and dogs, they've got challenges with being in crowds, loud noises. things like that. So when they're sitting in the same section as their fellow brothers and sisters, it gives them a little bit more sense of camaraderie, calming, reassurance, and which really helps them get back into and reintegrate into society, to include, challenges with PTS.
Now, when I think about, because you've got some big donations of tickets that come out. How many are you about to give away now?
We're coming up on 10 million.
10 million. Guys, this isn't a little organization, a little mission. That is a heck of a lot of tickets. When I think about sort of the business behind it, because that's what I do, right? I'm in business. I think, why would they give away that many tickets, these organizations? But then, we had a little bit of a conversation about the context. So what's better, having empty seats or filling those seats? And then, I don't know about you, man, but I've never gone to a show or a game and not bought a beer or 2 beers or a hot dog or soda, or when I'm with the kids, popcorn and snacks and everything. So it's really an all-around win, because it's also good for the local economy.
Absolutely, and that's where, for our donors, if they're large donors, corporate donors, or the teams or performers, there's that aspect of altruism. They want to give back and do the right thing. But on the business side, if they can get these individuals to these events for, in essence, free, it frees up that disposable income, because a lot of times we have these members that they don't make a whole lot of money, and it's free to join, 100% free to join VetTix or FirstTix. So they don't make a whole lot of money, because maybe you're a rookie, and you've got garbage shifts, and you're not making a lot of money. And so going to a ball game for a family of 4, a young family of 4, can be hundreds of dollars. So it literally could blow your monthly entertainment budget. So that's where, for our donors, it gets them into the venue. And now, it frees up some disposable income. So now I can buy my family some hot dogs, I can buy my buddy some beers, or buy my kid a ball cap or a souvenir. So sure. It's from the business aspect, it's really, it works well, but a lot of times that's not why our donors do it. They just want to give back.
It's easy to sign up, it's free to sign up, but it's also vetted, right? Let's talk a little bit about that.
It is, it's vetted, and that's where we use a third-party organization called ID.me that verifies either your service as a currently serving member of the military, to include Guard and Reserve, a veteran, or a first responder. And this organization was actually created by veterans, and the VA uses them. So if you want to access your VA records, you can do it through ID.me. So the VA uses them, USAA uses them, a couple other large organizations use them. And why we do this is to make sure that these people are who they say they are, and that they're verified, either retired or currently serving first responders, same thing with veterans and service members, to make sure that they are who they say they are.
Well, I saw Shay signing up for some tickets yesterday. I think he's pretty excited that Celine Dion is going back on tour.
Yeah.
So
Maybe we can get him a VIP meet and greet.
What are the URLs?
The URLs are super easy: VetTix, VETTIX.org, or for FirstTix, 1STTIX.org. That easy.
Guys, that's a huge win. Tell everybody about it. Hit the share button on this video. Brother, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for flying out. Avoid that coronavirus.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
So those guys have some interesting stuff going on.
You can now bring your family to that Celine Dion concert you've been talking about for years.
And I was hoping for Disney on Ice.
Can you see him in spandex skating around out there? Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Law Enforcement Today. We thank you so much for joining us. As always, we're going to leave you with a tribute to the officers that we've lost so far in the line of duty this year, set to Dave Bray's last call. Thanks all for watching. Thanks for sharing. God bless America.
Man down, I'm bleeding out. There's no time, so please hear me out. These are the last few words that I'd like to say to you all. This is my last call. thank her for those long, hard years that we tried to get it